you had this exercise, which was like the different voices. And it just goes to this internal development, right? We all have these almost internal voices, and each one of them is useful in different contexts, and they come up in different situations. But I'd love for you to maybe describe that you mean by internal voices, and kind of just maybe describe to the audience what the exercise might look like so they can get a
Yeah.
sense of that too.
Yeah, sure. So specifically what you're talking about is a body of work called voice dialogue. It was developed by a husband-wife team in the 1970s, Hal and Sidra Stone. And for anybody listening, voice dialogue, something called parts work and something called internal family systems work are similar things. They're not identical, but they're similar. But with voice dialogue, which I'll speak to because I've been trained in it, it's different voices or different sub-personalities or different selves within us. So virtually everyone as what we call a protector, something that tries to keep us safe. We all have a controller that tries to control the other voices and the world at large. We have an inner or vulnerable child. There are many kind of human sub-personalities that we all share. But in doing the voice dialogue work, as you and I did a little bit of that, Aydin, we ask when you would say something, and I would ask you to try to identify what voice that came from. And as you remember, we had some fun with it because one of them, is it okay if I share this?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, because one of them, you like putting names to them. So in terms of making decisions at times in your position as a CEO, sometimes there was this indecision that kept emerging. And so you referred to that part of yourself as indecisive Igor. That always stayed with me for some reason. but what it allows us to do, and we're talking again, we mentioned Keegan's subject-object move, it allows us to see that there are these different legitimate parts of ourselves that have competing needs and that do different jobs for us. And none of them are wrong. Right? Some of them are more appropriate in a given moment, but they all belong. And the last thing I'll say just really quickly is we tend to have some primary voices or primary selves, which most of us would refer to as, it's who I think of when I hear the name Reggie, or what Kent thinks of when he hears Kent, or Aydin when you hear Aydin. Those are our primary selves. It's how we see ourselves in the world. Where the real work gets done is in the disowned selves. Those parts of those sub-personalities that would either, pick one, either in the attic or in the basement. But they still try to get our attention sometimes. And they're not unrelated to the idea of shadow, the part of ourself we're not aware of that we deny. So having conversations, learning to recognize, oh, that's the voice of my inner critic. Oh, that's the voice of my antagonist. That's the voice of my, let's stay negative. That's the voice of my loving father. Because, those of us who have kids. So we have all of these voices, and learning how they interact with our primary self can be really helpful in understanding our responses and reactions in a given moment.
Yeah, and I remember we went pretty deep on this one, and obviously, like as a CEO, decisions and I obsess about decision making. It's one of my favorite topics of all time. And yeah, there's this personality, one of my inner voices that we labeled indecisive Igor, like you said. And there were many other personalities that we named as well. And what's really cool about it is, like, when you do things like this and you can give different thought patterns labels, it allows you to talk about them. It allows you to notice them. But then you also realize, like, when is it useful to, like, summon, different voices. It's just all part of self-awareness. And I think a lot of this, when you're interacting with a team, if someone gives you negative feedback, the way that you react to that, if you feel like your work was not recognized, or if you feel that this situation was not celebrated in the way it should be, all of these things, trigger different emotions. And it's really cool to understand your individual thought makeup. And if you can do that, I mean, the one thing which was really interesting in the work that we did there, Reggie, was when you talked about, some of the disowned selves, just because something is not maybe useful today doesn't mean. So one of my things was, let's kill indecisive Igor, let's obliterate it so it doesn't exist. And you're like, no, actually, that's like, all the voices can be useful. You just have to understand, and each one has kind of like a counter voice, like you mentioned.
Yeah, and that's a great example. Yeah, we don't, in none of those methodologies, again, I only know voice dialogue reasonably well, but even in parts work and in internal family systems, in none of those is it recommended that you kill any of the voices. So we definitely don't want to do that, because they have a role to play, and with virtually no exceptions, the role at some point in our lives is to keep us safe.